Okay, Sue.
Thank you, Mary. Okay, welcome to the Grey Bruce Board of Health meeting for March the 11th, 2022. Let's begin. We'll start with the roll call, Mary.
Sue Patterson.
Present.
Alan Barfoot.
Present.
Brian Milne.
Present.
Brian O'Leary.
Good morning.
Chris Peabody.
Present.
Luke Charbonneau.
I see he's connecting.
I'm here.
Helen Claire Tingling.
Good morning, everyone.
Janice Jackson sent her regrets. And Nick Saunders. Nick Saunders.
Okay, thanks, Mary. Nick will join us when he's available, if he is. And we do have Luke here now, so welcome, Luke and Helen Claire. All right, are there any amendments to the agenda? Seeing none, I'll ask for a motion to approve the agenda as presented. I have Alan and Chris, all in favor? That's carried, thank you. Does anyone have a disclosure of pecuniary interest or a conflict of interest? Seeing none, of course, if one should arise during the meeting, you may declare it then. Item 5 is adoption of the minutes from February 4th. You'll remember at that meeting, we held the election of the chair and vice chair and appointed the executive committee. We also had a presentation on oral health and we approved our code of conduct. Is there any discussion with those minutes? Seeing none, I'll ask for a mover and seconder to adopt, and I have Brian Millen to move and Brian O'Leary to second. All in favor? That's carried, thank you. Item 6 is correspondence and news releases. Dr. Era. And you're on mute, Dr. Era. There.
Good morning, Madam Chair. Good morning, Council. And we have four correspondence. The first two are from Peterborough Public Health letters to the Minister of Health of Ontario related to COVID vaccine increased uptake. One of them is related to adding the vaccine to the Immunization School People's Act, and the second one is related to updating proof of vaccination and requirement for a third dose. The recommendation is to receive. The main correspondence, in my opinion, on this list is number 3. It is from Sudbury Public Health related to equity and ensuring that we are doing public health, continuing to do what we do best, ensuring equity in the community. And the recent events in Ontario have included public displays of racism, anti-Semitism, and discrimination. And all of this is detrimental to the health of all. And the recommendation is to endorse the communication from Sudbury and support it. The final communication is operational in nature, but it was addressed to the chair and myself, and it comes from the town of Blue Mountains, and it is an invitation to establish a working group to facilitate and support communication and economic recovery, and the role of public health, and this would be as an advisor to ensure information is available to adapt to the recovery and monitoring of COVID activities and ensure safe reopening for businesses. And we will follow up with we have followed up with the CEO as the request came in, and the recommendation is to receive as well.
Thanks, Dr. Era. Any discussion with the correspondence? Helen Claire?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you, I respectfully suggest the board receive rather than endorse 613. That's the Sudbury Letter. I have some concerns about the language in the letter. It sounds great in terms of the large issue of equity. However, I invite the board to draw its attention to page 18 of the minutes. At the bottom is where you're going to find the language that I'm finding problematic. The letter states the signatories are, quote, disturbed by the hate-filled racist and white supremacist symbols and messages flowing from the demonstrations in Ottawa, end quote. No evidence has been provided to support this statement. I don't presume to speak for any members of the Freedom Convoy or truckers, but whatever one deems the overwhelming message to be, white supremacy certainly was not it. Absent any evidence to the contrary, I personally can't stand by this letter. Press footage showed images of various ethnicities participating in this freedom convoy. Press footage also repeatedly showed what seemed to be the same image of one Confederate flag and one upside down Canadian flag with a Nazi symbol that seemed to have been added on the back. The Confederate flag was denounced by members of the Freedom Convoy as being a plant, a provocateur. That individual that appeared repeatedly was stood out by the fact that his face or her face was covered in a sea of uncovered faces. So again, I'm not taking a position on the Freedom Convoy as such, but I am taking a very strong position on the language of this letter. It's possible that the upside down flag was someone's misguided idea of a clever protest symbol. The upside down flag is, I believe, internationally understood to be a symbol of distress. The Nazi symbol is widely deemed to be a symbol of fascism. Protesters have repeatedly claimed that Canada is in distress, and they have asserted a belief that Mr. Trudeau has fascistic tendencies. The Freedom Convoy participants seem to have several issues amongst them. They seem to be, some of them, against the sudden addition of cross-border vaccine mandates this late in the stage. That seems to be what initiated, what was the catalyst. Some also appeared to be anti-mandates of all kinds. Judging by the signs, a sizable majority of the people that were there were protesting Mr. Trudeau himself. Regardless of one's political persuasion or what one thinks of this convoy, to suggest that the overarching theme of the Ottawa protest was responsible for the flow of, quote, hate-filled racist and white supremacist symbols and messages, end quote, is at best incorrect, and at worst, a demonization of a substantial swath of Canadians who felt so passionate about their cause, whether or not it's misguided, that they took it to Ottawa. This letter appears political in nature, and as such, it's my firm belief that it's outside the scope of public health. Does public health really want to opine on the right to protest, or to define what anti-hate is, when hate is actually defined in the Criminal Code of Canada? And I note that the charges that were laid were for mischief. There was not a single charge for hate or hate-filled rhetoric, although there was lots and lots and lots in the press. I just think it's very irresponsible of us if we are going to be propagating information which on first blush seems to me to be largely misinformation. But again, I'm not here today to stand before you and defend the Freedom Convoy. I have no ties to any member of the Freedom Convoy or to its cause, but I do have a passionate and firm belief in trying to understand all aspects of something. And I also think that that is consistent with public health, to look at underlying causes. But I come back to that this the Freedom Convoy is outside of the realm of public health. So I could go on discussing what I think the issues are, but white supremacy, in my opinion, is not amongst those issues. And for us to take this on, I think is problematic. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Helen Claire, for sharing that. Any further discussion or comments? Dr. Era?
Thank you, Helen Claire, for this deep insight and analysis of the letter. I would agree with you on everything you said. I wonder if we can still endorse the underlying principle in public health that we address equity, whether it's food security, truth, reconciliation, living wage, and we point out in endorsement that we are not supportive of the language related to white supremacy and the convoy. Or is this going to be still not a favorable position comparing to receiving?
Helen Claire?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you, the problem that I see in the larger community, not just to do with this, but I see this as divisiveness in society at whole, where there are certain things that are tied to certain other things. Therefore, if you're for this, you also have to be for that. And so as a result of that, the seeming tying in this letter of issues of equity and issues of health equity in particular, which of course we all agree with, to tie that to a demonization of this convoy, which I think, to me, largely, if there's an underlying cause, it's a failure. It indicates a failure in democracy on a gazillion different fronts. So in short, I am not in favor of endorsing this in any manner. I would like to see us write our own, because I think what happens with this kind of correspondence is it gets endorsed just automatically and then becomes filed and part of the public record. And I'm not confident that any kind of disclaimer that we put in there would be captured, certainly in this day and age of disinformation. So respectfully to Dr. Ara's point, I would be more comfortable with us receiving this and writing our own, if that's necessary. But is it? I mean, this health equity underscores what we do. And issues of anti-racism are woven into what we do here, what Dr. Ara and operations does at every level of health. Do we really need, as a board, to comment on this? Not to make too fine a point of it. It would be like claiming that anybody that is a liberal is racist because Mr. Trudeau wore blackface. I don't think that the same signatories that authored this letter took it upon themselves to decry that action, for example, and circulate it and ask for everybody, all health units, to sign in and reaffirm their commitment to health equity and tie it to that particular incident. So I really have, in case you can't tell, very strong feelings about this. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thanks, Helen Claire. Dr. Era. You're on mute there. Okay.
Thank you. After hearing the second response, I'm convinced it is the best course of action is to receive instead of endorse and qualify part of or add a disclosure. And I do agree, if looking from that lens, if it is political, the health unit is not political, and it is. I would take my recommendation back, change it to receive, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any further comments? Luke?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm content to move past that one. My question for Dr. Era, if I may, is about the correspondence from the town of Blue Mountains, and just wondering, Dr. Era, how you intend to respond to that.
Thanks, Luke. Dr. Era?
Thanks for the question. The request itself in nature is operational, so our intent is to attend the working group, and the request is for the health unit to facilitate and support the group with information about the recovery and the activity of COVID-19 and whether there is a specific need to communicate to specific sectors and businesses about the projections of the recovery of COVID-19. In essence, not much different from what we do in general in Grey Bruce, but the request there is more specific for the township itself. And we have not had the first meeting for the work group to know exactly the specific needs, but I suspect the nature of the sectors, the business sectors in Blue Mountains is related to tourism, which means the activity of COVID-19 in the province would affect the activity of COVID-19 in the township. So they're being proactive, and I admire and commend them on and being proactive in this sense.
Luke, anything further?
And that's great, Dr. Thank you, Madam Chair. I just would say that I suspect most lower tier municipalities will have the same set of concerns and the same desire to engage with you. And I just, I know you'll be mindful about that and how your time and resources and the health unit's time and resources to participate in working groups across the region. If you do one, you may end up doing more. And I don't know, I appreciate it's operational. It's up for you to determine how to address that, but it is also political in that it involves these lower tier municipalities. Anyway, I hope that you'll, perhaps there are ways to work with the municipalities that also recognizes the finite resources of public health, and that you'll take that into consideration. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, Dr. Era.
I totally appreciate the thought, and this is actually the same discussion that Chair and myself had, that this would entail participating in the 17 municipalities, and I see the opportunity in this in engaging with the municipality on that level as well. If you look at the social determinant of health, a list of 12 or 13, depending on the source, topping that list is income. So the economic recovery is definitely a factor that affects health. And we can look at different models, but the model that worked in other programs is to have 4 quadrants for Grey Bruce and have 4 individuals, professionals, whether health promoters or myself and the 4 health promoters to connect with the municipalities in the 4 quadrants of Grey Bruce.
Okay. Anything further? I think we're in agreement that we will receive the correspondence and not endorse item 3. Okay, I'm seeing nodding heads. Dr. Era, media releases.
Madam Chair, I'll turn this item to Denis Law, and Denis has joined the health unit. If I may introduce him. He joined the health unit following a 19-year career as a journalist with the Holland Sound Sun-Times newspaper, where he covered a wide array of topics, including municipal and provincial, political, and local health care. Denis has also worked as a magazine editor for 7 years and as a freelance writer. With the Grey Bruce Health Unit, Denis will be overseeing media relations as well as internal communications. I'll turn it to Denis.
Welcome, Denis.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. Today's agenda includes 11 news releases, and this list reflects the current pandemic situation and our transition from pandemic to eventually endemic status, as it includes news releases both related to COVID-19 and about our normal programs. There are 2 news releases on vaccine clinics, 1 on changes to our situation report, and 4 related to the province's reopening and the lifting of restrictions, including 1 on the favorable position Grey Bruce is in as the province lifts its masking mandate later this month. A news release was also issued on the health unit's recommendation for rapid testing and the decision to lift a class order. Regarding our normal programs, news releases were issued on the planned reopening next week of the needle syringe program at the Grey Bruce Health Unit, as well as on upgrades to public health dental clinics. We also issued a news release on Chair Patterson being acclaimed to a 2nd term as Board of Health Chair.
Thanks, Denis. Any questions or comments for Denis? I have Brian O'Leary, then Helen Clare.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to say that for selfish reasons, I was quite excited when Denis was hired by Public Health, and I just want to welcome Denis. I'm really happy for you, and this is a great addition to our team. Thank you.
Thank you.
Helen Clare.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm interested in why that's selfish, but before I invite a response to that, I just would like to say, Denis, I noticed a real change in the kind of, or rather the detail, or I'm not in any way casting any aspersions to Drew, who did a fantastic job, but a change of tenor and a different energy that I noted, and I was very, very excited about. So Denis, bienvenue. Great to have you here.
Thanks very much.
Okay, Alan.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I just want to echo both Helen Clare and Brian's comments when I heard Denis was coming on board. I mean, we worked very close together, certainly, for a lot of releases over the years. So, yeah, great guy to come on the team, and welcome aboard, Denis.
Thank you very much.
Yes. All right, no hard, difficult questions for Denis on the media releases. They're very, very well done, and welcome aboard.
Thank you.
Okay, so we need a motion to approve the correspondence and news releases as presented. I have Helen Clare and Selwyn. All in favor? That's carried. Good. Thank you very much. Thanks, Denis.
Thank you.
All right, item 7 on the agenda is staff presentations, and Dr. Era.
Again, introducing Nelson Phyllis is an on-sound local with diverse background in communication, journalism, and media. He's a certified content marketer, graphic designer, writer, publisher, and award-winning filmmaker who has worked in the newspaper industry, marketing agencies, tourism, and technology. And I want to add something there that public health, if I can take 1 minute there. Public health, one of the areas for improvement for the whole sector is visibility. People did not know what public health before the pandemic was, and maybe give it 10 years. Again, if we continue what we were doing, if we do things right, people don't hear about us. And building a brand, marketing is key into this. And again, when seeing Nelson's CV and interview, and it's based on the job description we posted, I was very thrilled. That's going to be a game changer. The work he's going to invest into the health unit is going to be a game changer for public health, not only in Grey Goose, but in the province as well. I'll turn to Nelson.
Welcome,
morning, everybody.
Nelson. Welcome.
Thank you so much. Just share my screen here. All right, so as Dr. Ayers said, I'm going to begin my tenure here with a bit of a branding revamp strategy. So yeah, here's my little agenda for the day. So we're going to look at a big goal, the scope of this revamp that I'm proposing. Going to take a look at the breakdown of assets that we have, what do we need to do moving forward. We're going to take a look at voice and tone and how we kind of present ourselves both internally and externally. We're also going to look at some of the nitty-gritty things like corporate font and typography, how we present ourselves aesthetically. We're going to look at a larger branding identity overall, and then we're going to look at some potential real-world uses and a bit of an action plan. So first up, the goal. When I begin any project like this, I like to kind of zoom out and take a look at what we want to do, what would help us to define success. So part of that would be to discover what's been missing and what can help us grow and how to regain our purpose after COVID-19. So I came into this role and I started to conduct a series of interviews with various public health staff here. And I found a really impressive group of really passionate, talented people. Understandably, they're a little bit tired after 2 years of COVID. They're very ready for a change, of which I think we're going to get. And then underneath everything, they're also very optimistic and incredibly enthusiastic. So they're loving the work that they're doing. And I think this branding project is going to help to bring that forward. Secondly, we're going to reimagine and deploy a brand that embodies our pride in supporting and protecting community health. So we've been at the mercy of COVID-19 for almost 2 years here. It's been a really overwhelming topic for public health organizations. Some people didn't know what we did or that we even existed prior to the pandemic. So of course, our goal at the end of the day is to protect regional health and wellness and to inspire the longevity of community well-being. The goal part 2, if we kind of look at some of the engagement and some of the things we've been doing in terms of communicating with the public on a daily basis, is to retain a similar level of engagement via social media and public outreach that we've developed over the course of the pandemic. So through our various social media platforms, they're all up by a considerable margin. Thanks, of course, in part to the really talented and dedicated COVID-19 communications team that we've had here. They've been very consistent, and as well, they've been answering to a relentless public outcry for info. So that's just been happening on the daily, and they've done a great job of helping with that. We can also hope to build our new audience and engage with them. Part of our branding strategy will include researching and investing time as part of our communication strategy to learn about our more popular audiences, who they are, what they typically like to engage with, the kinds of information that they're kind of working with, where they live. And then as a second opportunity, that will allow us to kind of find out who we're not communicating so well with and find a way to do that better. So I wanted to provide a little bit of an overview of our engagements in 2021. So this is an example of how well we've been doing and this opportunity to engage with a huge audience of people locally. So I think it's unrealistic to think that we can sustain this type of growth moving on as we kind of transition this recovery stage of the pandemic. But we can shift as we kind of come into this more normal state of affairs. And we can sustain that upward swing with new content, new communications. We can increase exposure on programs and work that we're doing here because we have that larger audience. So the scope of what I'm proposing to do, number one, we have to develop an entirely new visual aesthetic to use across the board. That'll include things like our logo, little things like stationery and business cards, signage, social media content, email signatures, infographics, video, et cetera, et cetera. We're going to embrace color theory and corresponding imagery. There's a lot of good psychology behind using certain colors over others, and I think we should dive into that. We should also be using a little bit more photography in our communications and on our website, just to kind of help set a tone. Secondary to that, voice and tone. We need to set a standard for our public, partner, and stakeholder communications, just kind of outline how we need to be speaking to different audiences. We also need to help develop and sustain a positive company culture here within the organization. So we should be developing a plan as part of this branding revamp and as part of the way that we carry ourselves to kind of help broaden the scope of that positive company culture. We need to help improve workflow, how we collaborate and communicate internally, and then identify ways that we can help staff to work smarter. We can start with little things like addressing our internal intranet, helping its user friendliness, helping our staff to find information a little more easily, that kind of thing. And then lastly, we need to remember that a dedication to consistency is huge. So we need to be consistent in our messaging and our little things like email signatures, land acknowledgements need to be perfect, our naming, how we present ourselves publicly. There has been some confusion on, are we public health? Are we Grey Bruce Health Unit? Are we the Owen Sound Grey Bruce Health Unit? That kind of thing. So there's been a lot of confusion there for me. Here's kind of the end game. So if we kind of zoom back in, given all that information, at the end of the day, I want to combine our existing reputation within the community, our newly realized corporate brand identity that we're going to develop, and our sustained presence over the course of the pandemic to build us into the premier public health brand in Ontario. I think we can be known by our neighbors, colleagues, and within the province as innovators, professionals, leaders, and as the epitome of health excellence here. So this is just kind of an overarching viewpoint of how I see this kind of rolling out. So where do we sit? That's all well and good, but kind of taking stock of what we have and what we need to do, I think, is what comes next. So what do we have? We've got a logo. It needs to be reworked. I don't think it's been reworked. I believe since about 1998 was the last time our logo and our colorways and our visual aesthetic was kind of looked at. We do have a branding package. It comes from that time period as well. It's very incomplete. We also have Hootsuite, which is like a platform for social media content scheduling. It also gives us the opportunity to look at analytic insights, to review comments, to schedule things at the right times, et cetera, et cetera. We've got a lot of feedback from staff we can use, and we have a website. So what do we need? We need to basically overhaul our entire logo package. We need a primary and a secondary with alternate colorways. Logos get used in different ways. We need to address that. And furthermore, that needs to be available to all staff as well. I've already run into an instance here in the last month where some staff haven't had access to a high resolution version of the logo for use on posters or communications or in emails, that kind of thing. That stuff just needs to be readily available, like at all times. We need a complete branding package, as I mentioned. That's going to include all the niceties, all the aesthetic assets, and the detailed instructions on how and where to use them. We need to redefine why and kind of put it out there, like, why do we do what we do? Why are we in this business? Why do we love what we do? We need to provide direction for verbiage and language preferences. We can include some examples of real world uses. We need to develop an entire social sharing strategy. Everything can look great, that's all fine and dandy, but we need to know how and where we're sharing that very strategically. That's also going to include a strategy for answering public comments. We need to look at what we've got for software. We need a project management tool, something along the lines of Monday or Asana or Trello, or Microsoft 365 we've been using a little bit here. We can reorganize that intranet, as I've said. Bringing in Adobe, things like Photoshop and InDesign, that kind of industry standard software. And then we need an internal communication tool. Right now, I think if you don't see somebody in the hallway or you don't have an email sent to you, that's kind of how we communicate here. I think we need something a little more streamlined that allows us to kind of communicate really quickly and promptly. We need an action plan to address these key takeaways and guidance from staff. So I can work with HR to develop a strategy for implementation of feedback, that kind of thing. We need an avenue for outreach and updates. We need to update our website. Overall, that includes the URL, hosting provider, the overall design. I need to be able to build some branded templates for curated content for staff, just so everything kind of can be more consistent in the way that it rolls out, things like presentations, reports, social posts, that kind of thing. And then lastly, I need to be available for support to all staff, things with editing and vetting of content, assistance with wording, help with graphic design, that kind of thing. If we can kind of all get on board with that and kind of know that like we're all resources for each other, I think we'll go a long way. So voice and tone. Our corporate voice can benefit from a renewed sense of freshness after 2 years of COVID. I think we're doing well in that right now. We're getting back into projecting some of our project work, some of our other programs, that kind of thing. So a revised and refreshed update on voice and tone will help to present that united front to the public and to our partners and to our stakeholders, show off our professionalism, how well organized we are, and then just our collective identity as well. So I think that voice should reflect unity and professionalism, as I've said, a sense of innovation, enthusiasm like I hear from staff have, and our expertise. So there's a great opportunity here to usher in a new era of public health through communications after an event like COVID. We've been very stat heavy in the things that we've been presenting to the public and, very committed to numbers and accuracy. That's great. But as we return to programs and that kind of sense of normalcy sets in, we can adjust and start to present things a little more optimistically. We can present new opportunities. We can present kind of an idea of rejuvenation and a sense of renewed security and trust. So corporate font, it might seem like a really small thing. There's that famous scene in the Steve Jobs movie where he fires somebody for insisting that font isn't important. I just thought I'd kind of go over this. So this is an example of a font that I'd like to use. I'd like to see our corporate typeface, and even down to the font that we use, like everything should be overhauled. So this is just a modern sans serif font. This one's free for commercial use, for example. There's this old marketing adage that you shouldn't use any more than 2 fonts in any particular project. I totally believe that that's true. It can kind of contribute to confusion, and kind of you can overwhelm people if you use too many things like this. Staying clean, staying organized, looking a certain way, being consistent, I think that's really important. As well as a rename and a refresh. So part of a successful rebrand and a corporate refresh means addressing the level of resistance that we might see and feel associated with our current brand. So here's a little snapshot of a Google search that I did the other day. Just for our name. So a single point of metadata here includes 3 different names for our organization. I think if we can kind of dial this in and get a little more organized in terms of what we call ourselves, how we're presented online digitally, it's going to further affirm our rankings, our accessibility to people. We're going to be more easily found. There's not going to be any confusion between us and health services, that kind of thing. So we're known as public health. Part of that is because of our logo. It's a very broad typographic kind of logo that emphasizes public health over the Grey Bruce Health Unit. So we've actually owned the URL GBHU for over a decade, I'm told. And this is just an example of how we're perceived now versus how we could be perceived if we dial everything in, boil it down, and present like a united branded frontier. There's an example of Dr. Ara's email address, pretty lengthy, a lot of opportunity to have a little typo in there, that kind of thing. I think if we present the reduced one there with a new branding package, it might help information kind of flow more freely. And of course the logo. So here's an example of our current logo. The branding package that I have access to right now, it describes the new logo as friendly and accessible. And it was also designed with the following in mind, particularly freshness, cleanliness, and safety. So the color schemes were chosen to be not trendy. And I think that was an effort to kind of have them be a little more timeless and have it last a little bit longer. And then again, the words public health, they were dubbed to be more important than our legal name. So it was agreed that projecting public health was less likely to change over time, as I said, would help to differentiate between us and others that use the Grey Bruce in their name. Here's just a quick example of an updated brand logo that I prepared as part of my interview process, actually, just with some revamped colorways, just kind of a more modern take on it. And then here's a few that I threw together as just possible updates and adaptations of the current brand as it sits, just a way to kind of refresh what we're looking at, how we present ourselves, that kind of thing. And then here's some examples of potential real world uses. I have this thing with hoodies. I think if you can convince your employees that they want to wear the corporate brand on a weekend to a party or to a bonfire or something, then you've done your job really well. And then finally, an action plan. So what do we really need to kind of sit down and do? I think there's kind of 4 key pillars here. One is the logo design, the creation of a brand package. We need to implement all these brand identity standards. And then we need to create a corporate communication strategy. So that's going to help align Denis and I in terms of the internal and external communication efforts that are going on. That's going to help us unite our corporate brand voice. It's going to kind of bring us all under one umbrella. It's going to include the perceived challenges that we have to go over, propose solutions based on staff and management surveys and interviews. And that's about it for me. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nelson. Okay, questions, comments? And Nelson, I'll ask you if you can stop sharing your screen for me, please. I just want to say this revamp is it's energizing and refreshing, and it's exciting. Okay, Luke.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. And yeah, thanks, Nelson, for the presentation and for all of your ideas. And I think there's definitely some work to be done in terms of improving, well, a lot of the things you mentioned, the communication and the way we present ourselves to the public, and particularly the different names that this organization is known by across the region. I think that's something that I certainly noted myself before I was a member of this board. And I have to admit that there were times when I wasn't even clear the difference between the health unit and Grey Bruce Health Services. Now I know, I can assure you that, but I didn't know at the time. I wonder though, and I'm a little concerned, and maybe you can talk to me a bit about this, the question of entirely revamping the visual aesthetic of the Grey Bruce Health Unit at this moment is confusing to me, because our brand has never been better known, right? It's on doors, windows across the entire region. It's, you can see the numbers of likes on our social media are way up. Our current brand image has been, we've gotten free advertising of that brand image intensely over the last 2 years. Private corporations would pay hundreds of thousands of dollars to achieve the level of saturation that we have received because of the pandemic. It seems like the worst possible time to change the logo. Like, you wouldn't, if in my own business, if I had achieved that level of saturation across Grey Bruce with my logo, the last thing I would do would be to then completely revamp it at that moment. It seems like you're just going to waste the investment of time and energy that you've had. So, like, I don't see a major problem with the current brand identity of the Grey Bruce Health Unit. It's respected. If anything, it's the confidence in public health has increased. The understanding of what it does has improved, and the logo is associated with that brand identity very strongly. So I have to say, I don't really like the idea of dumping that image that seems so ubiquitous now.
Right.
So anyway, that's my concern, and maybe you can talk to me a bit about it.
Certainly. So I think kind of liken it to putting on a new tie every morning. We're going to be who we are. We're just going to look a little bit different. We're going to be kind of freshened up. We don't have to dump everything. Certainly, we can revamp. We can tweak some things. We can also do this slowly. It doesn't have to happen in a month. It can happen over the next year. But that kind of, it typically does happen after a big event like this. I was referencing the Owen Sound Attack, for example. They won the OHL championship in 2011. Boom, the next year they came out with a brand new logo and a brand new jersey. So people kind of celebrate, like when they come out of the other end of something like COVID, we can benefit from a little bit of a refresh here. This is a good time to celebrate who we are and what we do well.
If I can, Madam Chair, it just seems like the opposite of celebrating it. I like if the like you change your brand when you need to distance yourself from something, right? Like you change, you don't like where you're at or the image you have, and so you change it. When you're celebrating who you are and who you've been, you double down on the brand. So I like everything you're proposing underneath the visual reconstruction or visual aesthetic changes. I just think my preference would be to double down on the existing visual perception of it and maintain the logo and build on what has been built over the last couple of years. We're so well recognized. When Coca-Cola changed their brand in the 80s, it was a disaster, right? You want to cash in, you don't want to cash out. So anyway, I've made myself clear. Those are my thoughts. You guys you're progressing, and you'll progress the way you feel is necessary, but that's how I feel. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thanks for that, Luke. Any other comments? Helen Claire, and then Sylvia.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, Delson, welcome. And the same comments that I made earlier to Denis, I pull back again and give them to you. Great always to have new, fresh energy. I understand my colleague Luke's concerns, and I understand, Nelson, what I'm taking away from you is that your presentation was at this point very zoomed out, very an overview, and that any transition is likely going to be slow. And I expect that you will be bringing back presentations, will continue to be made at the board level so that we can be kept apprised of progress. I do think there's some merit to what Luke has said with regard to keeping some things that work well, but I also think it's really a great opportunity to have a good look at that. One of the challenges we've had, I believe, from a public relations point of view, is the lack of a strong narrative voice, and that is part of what I'm looking forward to in a revamped, in a branding. I've since I've been on the board 18 months or so now, I think, branding is something that I have raised repeatedly. If we don't have a strong narrative, other people fill it in, and to the extent that we've had some difficulties with our narrative in the community, I believe it's because of that. This is an incredibly high functioning health unit, and we have a committed professional board with municipal leaders that all are pulling together to the best of their collective ability for that common goal, to keep this huge area, to make good decisions about health. So in particular, the two things that I'm looking forward to hearing about going forward is the two publics, the internal public, so that the staff and so on from the health unit do have that mechanism, that vehicle in place, that where they can communicate their everything, concerns, kudos, and that can be captured and incorporated into this single brand. And second, the public's out in the larger community who have not been on side. It's a small group, but we need to be able to bring them in, to find out what their concerns are, to be able to answer those concerns, and to the extent that it's possible to bring them in, to do our best to do so. So I'm looking forward, Nelson, to hearing how what the plans are going forward as you drill down to that level. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Very good. Selwyn?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Helen Clare says so eloquently, you're such a good speaker. I feel so proud to be a part of this health unit when you use words like you just used to talk about us working collaboratively for the betterment of our greater public. Nelson, I have to tell you, I felt really excited and really good watching that presentation. Because I love what I saw. I love the thought that goes behind it. I've always said I'm not an artistic person at all, and I sometimes will look at something, and if it doesn't strike me as an apple, I don't interpret it to be an apple.
Right.
But I would say that I love the idea of some new, fresh energy. And on the issue of change, I would say that change is constant. And almost to be expected. And if you're not changing, you're not evolving. And so this is part of the evolution of our health unit. We are constantly rethinking, rebranding, showing a different side, freshening ourselves. I think I see all of that as being good and not a negative, trying to run from anything. It's just a natural part of our evolution, and it sends a signal that we are constantly examining ourselves, and we're anything but stale. So those are my two cents.
Good, thank you. Dr. Era.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I really appreciate the feedback and regarding timing of change, I do believe this is the best time there is. There is a cycle in public health where there's a crisis, whether it's Walkerton, SARS, or COVID, and public health is in the center of attention. And that's consistent with all the things that comes with it, more work and more funding and more programs and visibility. Then that expires after 4 years, because that's the span life of a government. And the attention of the public is way even shorter than 4 years when things happen. So we are in the spotlight and making changes. It's not disowning our own logo, rather it is building on it. So even if we change it drastically where it's not recognizable, the two logos can go on from the same source for a period of time. It's not going to happen over a month or two, like Nelson mentioned. It will be a year or even more. Like if you go to basics, and I'm not the expert in communication, I'm an expert in communication about public health emergencies, but I have quite the interest, and I have looked into very credible sources. When you look at the logo, the main function of a logo, for example, OLeary, is to be memorable. Anybody who is 5 years old should be able to draw it. Mercedes or Puma or Nike. Any one of us can remember what it is. I can win any bet if somebody can draw the Health Unit logo. My email, that's the example that Nelson mentioned, I struggled from day one. I have never been able to convey my email verbally to somebody without them saying, text it to me. So again, there is a huge opportunity with public health being in the spotlight. And I would actually go in certain aspects. When Nelson was presenting in the interview and in subsequent meetings, I can see how a person can be very careful in case the brand or the logo, somebody's married to it. I would look at the name of the health unit. It is repeated name across the province based on the Health Promotion Protection Act. That's the legal name. And public health is a very, very general term interpreted across North America being private, public versus private, not even related to the functions of the health unit. I would go to a name similar to Sick Kids. Everybody knows what Sick Kids is, even in Europe. They will know it's that institution in Toronto, a hospital, well-established academic center. Again, how far we can go, it's not going to be decided over 1 day or 2 days, and it's going to be evolution. And like Buck mentioned, it's inevitable. It is part of the function. It's not a decision that needs to be made, I believe. I'll stop there if there are any questions on whatever I mentioned.
Dr. Zayed?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to add also to that it's not only about the brand or the logo. The branding really is important in terms of community profile. What is our role? Until now, there are people who do not know what is the role of public health exactly. So this is something I struggle with. It's not specific to Grey Bruce, but in general, the role of public health. We need to use marketing or social marketing for this role of public health in the community. And so people really know what is our role, what we do, and how we can support them.
Thank you. Other comments, Alan, and then Brian O'Leary.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I'd also like to welcome Nelson to the team. Yeah, I was also excited seeing that presentation. I think taking a little bit at a time, we can achieve, I think it's a prime example of somebody new coming in and just pointing out kind of the obvious of what needs clarification. So long and short of it, I look forward to the changes coming. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks. Brian O'Leary.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I want to be really careful here because I really do respect everything you said, Luke, and not just as a mayor, but from someone that happens to be running a pretty successful business himself. But I just look at this as there's been so much focus on public health over the last 2 years. And, we didn't do everything right. We made mistakes as a board. I'm sure there was mistakes made by staff. I look at this as an opportunity to come out the other side and say, look, we've learned from some of the things that went on over the last 2 years, and this is a refresh, and this is where we're going, and this is who we are. And I just look at it as a great opportunity. This is what Nelson does, and I respect that, and I think it's exciting. So welcome aboard, Nelson.
Thanks very much.
Good. Any other comments? Selwyn?
Sorry, Madam Chair. One really important point that I forgot to make is that I absolutely agree with Luke on the point that New Coke was a big mistake.
I even forget what the Coca-Cola logo looked like the change. So, okay, so we're looking at, I want to say, to me, this we're valuing growth and our culture and our values and everything, and we're changing with the times. We're keeping up with everything, and I think it's important that we have a professional to help us do this. And if staff are excited about it, the public will be too, just as we are. So thank you, Nelson. Luke, a final comment?
Yes, I've heard that a couple of times about evolution and change and being inevitable, and I get all that. But let's not underestimate the value of stability. Right. And public health is a major institution that ought to project stability and confidence. Being stable, being consistent for the long term is part of what gives public health its gravitas in the community. Changing all the time, I mean, change isn't just evolution. In this case, it's a matter of choice. And we don't have to choose to change. We can choose to be stable. And I think particularly in this moment, having stable institutions that look the same year in and year out is something that will benefit us and the whole community. So don't be so quick to say we must evolve, we must change. We got a good logo. Lots of the stuff that Nelson's proposed is great and I support. But this question of that we must change the way we look every 5 years or in the response after every major crisis. Sometimes people just want things to be stable and we can help project that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thanks, Luke. Nelson, any final comments?
No, oh, maybe yes. I think as the public changes, like landscapes change, audiences change, I think the audience expects us to kind of adapt as well. So certainly a logo is a small part of it. Our visual aesthetic is a small part of changing our brand. We can talk about colors and font all day, but if we need to kind of project a new sense of identity moving forward, whether that's a visual one or not. So yes, thank you. Thank you so much.
All right. Dr. Era.
Thank you. It's just seeing how the discussion went, I just want to make sure that, you know, Nelson is not going to be painted with the color that he changed the health unit. This is something that I wanted to do before the pandemic, way before the pandemic. You know, when you say a hospital, everybody knows what happens in the hospital, whether it is culturally or whether it is previous TV series, Dr. House, or people know exactly what happened in the hospital. Until this day, after 2 years of the pandemic, people don't know what the health unit does. They know we manage outbreaks right now because of the pandemic, and we talk about beach water or air quality or climate change, and those are not associated with the health unit. There is definitely the opportunity to capitalize on the momentum that we have from the past 2 years and build on it. And again, where I wanted to mention the point, Nelson suggested, you know, having one name, health unit, Grey Bruce Health Unit. My suggestion, let's look into what the partners, what the community, what the internal staff, what the board would like to be a name, including something that's unique for Grey Bruce. You look at the board of Blue Waters. Everybody knows what Blue Waters is immediately. Sick kids. So it could be something short, different from the legal name, or it could be Grey Bruce Health Unit, depending on what that survey, communication with the public, seeing how it's done. It's not going to be a change where, you know, today we're here, tomorrow we're going to move to a different building, different names, everything. It's going to be based on science and data and proper building brand. Thank you.
Okay, very good. So Nelson, we look forward to your updates and future presentations. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right, next on the agenda is the Medical Officer of Health update. So Dr. Era.
Kelly, if you can share the screen, please. So, Madam Chair, this is a presentation on a strategic direction for the coming 3 years. It's a presentation of 2 parts. First one is with myself, the other one with Dr. Zayed, and sorry to move these slides. Thank you. If you can go further. This is a summary of the entire presentation. There is 0 to 1 year, 0 to 3 years, and 0 to 15 years. And my part would be on the 0 to 15 years, and the details would be with Dr. Zaid on the coming 3 years. The first one is recovery from COVID, and that would entail certain functions, one of them continuing to monitor and respond. And we have the capacity and the expertise in doing this. There will be a backlog, or there has been a backlog of immunization for school or other immunization other than COVID, dental health, like we mentioned in the last meeting, vision screening, return to school. So this is anticipated to be completed over the coming year. And at the same time, we will be working on the 0 to 3 years. And the one bullet there is rural mental health and substance use. And this is definitely an emergency on its own. And we wanted to capitalize and gain utilize the momentum from the central role of public health in responding to the COVID emergency and use that momentum to address the opioid overdose crisis and the mental health. There are other goals related to growth and development, and that is tied into the first one as well. It affects it directly in the long term. Environmental health, IPAC hub, injury prevention, and sexual health and harm reduction. And again, those will start this year, but will continue for 3 years. Having the 0 to 5 years, Center of Excellence in Rural Public Health, it is an objective that is, I believe, necessary to allow us to achieve our goal in ensuring health for all, ensuring that healthy people stay healthy. That's our role. And this can be done in many ways, but focusing on that excellence and the rural public health aspect as subspecialty is unique. And there are certain metrics to it. I should mention in the 0 to 1 years, there is supporting settlement of newcomers from Ukraine. And obviously this is something that we can be reactive to, or we can be proactive and continue to connect with the partners in the community on ensuring we are in good standing to receive newcomers if that happens. If we can go to the next slide, please. This is about the 0 to 15 years. Like if you have a project, thank you. If we have a project, we can map it out. We know from A to Z what we're going to do. But if we're looking at the trajectory of public health for 15 years, with many changes that they usually happen, whether it's changing in government, provincially, locally, changes in technology, changes in mandates of public health, having a map of a maze to navigate is not an option. It will be the other one, even if it is a maze in front of us and we know it. That's the way we're going to be seeing the future. It's a huge wall, and we know what's coming maybe in the coming next year or 2 years. Around the corner, it becomes not visible. There's uncertainty. So if we go to the next slide, and that's where the importance of having a goal, a Northern Star, to navigate under any circumstance. And that's what many of the successful businesses have done. If you can go to the next slide, please. Having the Northern Star metric is not new in management. Uber, Amazon uses it, and it allows for change to be more effective. If you look at the left side of the graph, whenever there is a change, if we can keep, to the best of our ability, our eyes on where we want to head, where we're going, the change will be minimal, and the achievement, the progress will be obviously purposeful and more effective, versus random change completely, wherever the winds take the ship. If you look at the right side, again, it's where change is not purposeful, it's a flat line. When it is reactive, there is definitely good progress, but it is a proactive change and keeping the vision that we want. And the Center of Rural Health, Center of Excellence, was the strategic direction that we put together in 2019 after the budget change of 10% less in our budget. And instead of, many health units had the position, no, we don't want this change. Our response was, yes, we can do it. And we are going to be unique in the way we're going to do innovation in public health, specifically for rural public health, which is a subspecialty. And again, if you look, public health in general as a function is not as known. Rural public health is even more unique. And if we can prove ourselves, and I see no reason why we're not able to, and we have been during the pandemic as a center of excellence, learning organization, academic center, service that is connected with the community and its partners, that will make our journey that much more easier, enjoyable, and productive. If we can go to the next slide, please. That's the last slide in my part of the presentation. There are metrics to measure our progress. And one of my mentors in epidemiology said, every graph is incorrect, but some of them are useful. Incorrect in a way that does not represent the reality, but some of them are useful in that. This one, the balanced scorecard, is well used, well established, and it looks at, if you have a line going through it in the middle, the lower part is the measurement of the process and the input. So what we have, whether capacity, infrastructure, and quality and performance, all of it is something we measure as we do our work or before we do our work. The second one up there is community focus, the partnership, how much we're successful in mobilizing the community to do the work and to support the same focus. And determinant of health, obviously, the holy grail to ensuring people are healthy, whether it's income or education or all of it. Those are measurements of outcome. And this is one of the metrics that will be used, and Dr. Zaid will give examples how it will be used over the coming 1 to 3 years, or sorry, 0 to 1 and 0 to 3 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ar. So good morning, everyone. In this part of presentation, can you shift to the next slide, please? Yeah, next. Yes. So in this part of the presentation, I hope to provide an overview of a Grey Bruce House Unit recovery situation to date, specifically highlighting our work to support community recovery, continue its COVID response, support our employee wellness, and integrate lessons learned from the pandemic. I also will provide an overview of the strategic plan for the next 3 years and to build a more sustainable public health system that meets the changing needs of our community in Grey Bruce. Next. So what is the current situation right now? So the situation is we are having 3 parts, or as you see here, the 3 circles, response, recovery, and readiness. So we are really juggling with the three in the same time. So of course, we need to continue the response and scale up or down our readiness depending on the situation, and we need to work on the recovery plan. So as to say, in a percentage way, recovery will be our 50%, and readiness is 25%, and response is 25%. Next. So our road to recovery, and I like to use the traffic signs. Next. So there are two slides about the recovery highlights, just for information. So ongoing response, as I mentioned, one circle is about the response. So this is expected to continue with focus on high-risk approach for high-risk settings. So, and outreach for priority population or vulnerable population. So this is our main focus of response at this stage, ensuring flexibility of scale up and scale down for readiness for any potential surge planning, including retaining a casual pool of temporary employees, restarting some of the prioritized program waitlist, supporting community recovery. And the plan is currently initiated through a phased approach. Next. So the phased approach is slow phased and staged approach, protecting the population with high social impact, focus on individual level, mental health stress, and organizational level stress and resilience. So this is really an important part of the recovery right now. Focus on public health resilience or community resilience, restore programs with focus on mental health promotion, health equity and inclusion, childhood and youth development, school health program, and substance use and addiction. So these are the main areas really that has some impact during the pandemic 2 years. Next. Going to the strategic plan. So strategic plan for 3 years, as Dr. Ara mentioned. And then we will have, Dr. Ara mentioned the main highlights for the outcomes with timeline for this plan. So in this part, I like to provide more specific details about the strategic plan and again, our road to excellence. And this will be the ultimate goal. So this is really the North Star, or the goal that we want to be transform public health system to a center of excellence in rural health. And this is really mainly transforming public health to a system that is profiled by rural health excellence. Next. And I'm going to inundate you with some of my pyramids and scorecards. So the first one is this strategic plan, which is the work that has been done before, and we build on that. We start from the apex of the pyramid with the vision, which has been approved by the board, Healthier Future for All, and the mission, which is working with grassroots communities to protect and promote health. And then we have the values that have been a collaborative work in the organization, where staff work together and choose or select some values that they feel related to, and these values were also 4 values, which is respect, integrity, transparency, and excellence. Then we have, and then there was some goals and strategies, but the pandemic struck at this time, and we need to really resume that work. So the work will start with, we have some goals and strategies, but the balanced scorecard is the main strategic plan where we really consider how we will do things and what are the areas that we need to consider in every goals and strategy or initiative. And then there are specific strategic initiatives which focus on our rural health specifically to excel in that. And this initiative, it might take a few, it doesn't take like 1 year, or it's a short term. So that's a long-term initiative that we will build on. Next. So again, this public health strategic planning is something that shows how strategy is rolled out in an organization to the operation. So I put here again the apex or the strategic apex, which profile or this pyramid of vision of strategic pyramid, and there is this U-turn thing that comes from like technostructure support and the management feedback. So this is the context. It provides some context or feedback on how vision, mission, values are selected, and then we go to the middle line management, and from the middle line management we have the strategy where we can start to operationalize this strategy with operating core feedback and working together into operationalize this strategy to an operation plan. And this plan is an annual service plan that helps the organization to know their goals and metrics on an annual basis that is evaluated as a cycle. So annual service plan cycle, but in the end, we are serving the strategic plan of the 3 years or 5 years or 10 years, etc. Next. So this is again our scorecard. So in any project for public health, there are these 4 quadrants, and it is balanced because it is balanced between the input and the output. And this balance, like we have to consider these 4 quadrants in any project or any initiative that we do. The quality of and performance, as we will seek measurable excellent performance of public health practice founded by public health sciences and evidence. The capacity and infrastructure is important in terms of human resources and financial stewardship. The community focus is the community engagement and collaboration and trust. So this is a very important parameter or quadrant for us. The 4th quadrant is how we orient our stakeholders and public health and our public health approach to address complex social determinants of health. So many problems that we have in the community is complex problem, and we need always to have this lens of social determinants of health and equity. Next. For the strategic initiative, again, going back to this pyramid, so there is the balanced scorecard and the strategic initiative. And I mentioned that this initiative usually shape our road or journey to excellence. So there are people, programs, partnership, and projects. And the people continue in this stage, we support employees and enhance workplace wellness, because this is exactly the fundamental of our work is our work capacity. Programs is identifying an opportunity prioritized by public health program and advanced innovation. The partnership focus on effective collaboration to support community well-being post-pandemic. The project focus on health equity, inclusion, and mental health resilience, public health, and having this public health learning system in the organization and outside the organization. All our project, as I mentioned also in the previous presentation about how we are really optimizing the use of foundational health standards and the effective public health practice. Next. So for the people, we really have, this is the end result that we, or the ultimate vision for that is effective staffing capacity, culture of trust and transparency. So it comes mainly from our values, effective communication and time management, foster the work-life balance for the staff and their families. How we will do that? Next slide is our processes that will continue over the time tracking of short-term, medium, and long-term. So there is time tracking, monitoring, flexible work arrangement, internal communication strategy, team building based on collaboration and efficiency, staffing capacity maintenance, training and education plan, performance strategy. And we started already to work on that diligently from now. Next. So the second P is a program. So program key component, again, as I mentioned, we are taking in consideration the 4 quadrants of the balanced score, strengthen the capacity and infrastructure and emergency management, information and knowledge, human health resources, advance the creation of an enhanced natural and built environment, improve health through reducing preventive disease and injuries, and optimize healthy human development. And this is across the lifespan, starting from early childhood development, maternal child, youth health, adult and seniors health and well-being, improve the prevention and control of communicable diseases and communicable and infectious diseases. Dr. Era mentioned these programs, and this is the focus of the program. And this is for the 0 to 3 years school age immunization backlog. And we started that, the catch up as well, dental health, vision screening, return to school to support through school health programs, sexual health and harm reduction, rural mental health and substance use, growth and development and healthy baby, healthy children, environmental health, IPAC hub program. And as you know, we are different than other health units. We are taking the role of being an IPAC hub to the region, in addition to our role as an auditor or infection control. But this is an educational role that is very important, and we follow the effective public health practice in this role as well, and injury prevention. And as you see, all these programs is based on data that we have. What are the things that are prioritized based on our incidence and prevalence. Next. So the third part would be the partnership. So as a rural house of excellence, if we are starting on this journey, we need to strengthen effective partnership that address inequity, marginalization, and stigma, continuing community partnership and conversations with multi-sectoral committed partners to identify themes of challenges and opportunities specific to our area and address issues of significance, continue to look for opportunities to incorporate innovative approach for inclusion and community engagement. And this is a very important part, as also working on the branding. This will be really an important part for us. Focus on applying approaches that strengthen public health learning system, population health approach, foundational standards, as it's a very important focus for our work, which include effective public health practice, effective communication, equity lens, population health data, program planning and evaluation. So in every partnership, we are trying to incorporate this public health approach. And that's why it is important for the community and partners to know the role of public health with this specific context. And the focal area of partnership include comprehensive strategy to address falls in older adults and across the lifespan, because we really have a problem with that. collaborative opioid response involving multiple community partners and peer support, community alcohol conversation and comprehensive strategy to address the drinking culture in a rural environment, participation in action groups addressing income security, food security, safe and affordable housing. And we really have great partnership in that in our community here with this context. Grey Bruce Healthy Community Partnership, Advisory Committee on Emerging and Urgent Public Health Issue, and we started that after the pandemic, especially after the outbreak in Hanover, and the work that comes after that with the outreach services that we started to work together with our partners. And we decided to continue this based on the feedback from partners. We will start to continue this as a committee for emerging and urgent public health issues. Nurturing strong, trusted relationship with indigenous population based on mutually beneficial, respectful principle and culturally appropriate practices. Strengthening relationship with Anabaptist communities, including supportive community health needs. Partnership with academic education, school boards, and research institutes. So this profile really our context as Grey Bruce region. The final one is our projects. So in project, we have some principle, adopting evidence-based practice, supporting data sharing collaboration, optimizing continuous quality improvement, developing, implementing healthy public policy, advancing research, innovation, and public health learning system, supporting community development, empowerment, and engagement. And the next slide is the focal area of this project. So there is Bruce Gray Data Information Sharing Collaborative, the BG DISC, best practice spotlight organization, continuous quality improvement, innovative rural program designed to address unique challenges of rural environment, outreach advocacy projects to address vulnerable needs and prevent stigma, enhanced capacity project, branding public health. And this slide, I know this is very difficult one, but all my explanation previous to that one explain this one, but this is like our cheat sheet for everything that I've mentioned. So it includes our vision, mission, values, approach, collective areas of focus, strategic goals in this 5 area related to capacity. The yellow one is the environment, built and natural environment, preventable and injuries is the third column, and this orange column is about healthy human development, and the last one is about communicable and infectious disease. The outcome, as you see in the lower left part, include the 1 to 3 year, 3 to 5 year, and 5 to 15 years. This arrow that goes across the interdependence related to data and evidence generation and partnership. And the last row include evidence informed through continuous research, evaluation, effective public health practice, root cause analysis and quality. And the context that we use is HEPA, Ontario Public Health Standards, policy development, surveillance, and public health core competency and foundational standard. Next. So the next step in this strategic plan is to resume the strategic plan working group that was started in 2019. So we will resume that group to develop the strategic plan detailed report from 1 to 3 year metrics. So this will be a collaborative work, 3 to 5 metrics and 5 to 15 year metrics. rolling out the strategic plan, as I mentioned in that drawing about going from strategy to annual service plan, and having a health status report that focus every year on one or two subjects with all its data, and evaluation of the progress. So quality evaluation or continuous quality evaluation is something that we will continue on an annual basis, and see our indicator of the 4 quadrants of the scorecard, the balanced scorecard, which one that we did well, which one that we haven't really needs improvement, which one that might need change. So that is the annual quality improvement. And of course, there is a comprehensive improvement after every stage. For that strategic plan, it will be at the end of the 3 years. The other thing is also optimizing the team building capacity with effective staff engagement towards continuous productive and efficient work, and leverage internal and external communication strategies. So this is really an important part, an important time for communication, and leverage this communication internally to optimize the team building, and externally to profile our role and effective contribution with our stakeholder and community. Next. And yes, we will start small here, but after our final destination is really the best is yet to come, hopefully. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Zayed and Dr. Era. So questions, comments, a lot of information there. Good information.
Sorry for that.
Oh, it's good. Very good. I'm not seeing any hands. Everyone's digesting it. Luke.
I just want to say thank you to both of you for all of that information. It's very helpful for me, being a new member here, to get that strong sense of everything that you're doing and the strategy going forward. And it all looks really positive. And yeah, thank you very much for your work.
Very good, Luke. Anyone else? All right, very good. All right, Dr. Era, I'll let you continue your update, 8.2 and 8.3, and then I think we'll take a very short break.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The 8.2, it's a standing item. There is no update there, Madam Chair. The 8.3, the major update is the work that the Grey County is leading on the task force for mental health to address it. And this is very consistent with our efforts for opioid overdose and mental health. And the committee is meeting later this month. Public Health will be presenting on the subject and the programs that we have in the community. And we will keep you posted on subsequent developments with that task force.
Any questions for Dr. Era? Okay, I need a mover and seconder to receive the Medical Officer of Health update as presented. I have Alan and Chris. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. So let's take a 5-6 minute break and come back at 10:40. If you want to just...
Okay, Sue.
Thank you, Mary. Welcome back, everyone. We'll continue on with the agenda. Item 9 is corporate services. And the first item, 9.1, is the BDO audit planning report. And we have Kim Rutherford here to highlight that report for us. Kim?
Yes, through you, Madam Chair. So this is the annual report we've received from BDO with regards to our audit. So BDO was hired to complete our 2021 audit, and our audit is currently underway. The document in your package outlines management's responsibility during the audit and BDO's responsibility in the various roles. They've set materiality at 3% of our expenses, which is approximately $450,000. They use that number to determine their sample sizes, their testing, and which transactions that they want to look into and get additional audit information on. And within that document, BDO has identified 3 key risk areas for our organization. The first is revenue recognition. Due to the complexity of the government transfer standard, they just want to ensure that the way we recorded our revenues has been done properly. So they'll be looking at that section. The expenditure accruals is another risk area. So they'll be testing to ensure our expenses are not overstated in an attempt to show that we've spent more than we have, or an attempt to show that we've spent all of our funding. And the last one is the control environment. So they want to test to ensure that the controls that we're saying we have in place are in fact being used and are working as described. So far during the audit, it's been going well. There's been no issues, and it's been a pretty routine audit so far. So things are going well, and we should be in a good position to have all our financial information ready to give to the ministry when they give us what the due date for that reporting is. Thank you.
Thanks, Kim. Any questions for Kim? I think this is pretty straightforward. We'll all be receiving these reports in our own municipalities. So, and I would like separate motions for each one of these items in the corporate services update. So I need a mover and seconder, please. I have Brian Millen and I have Luke. All in favor? That's carried. Thanks for that, Kim. And you're on board again. We have 9.2. This is the December 2021 financial statements and capital projects. Kim?
Yes, through you, Madam Chair. So our December statements show that we ended the year with a $976,000 surplus. That's similar to what we were reporting for the last few months. So we knew that we were going to have surplus. And that's the result of various underspends in a few of our programs. Seniors Dental, we needed less of the COVID extraordinary funding than we originally requested. And we also received the IPAC hub funding, which was additional funding that we received in year that we did not originally budget for. For salaries and benefits, they were below budget as a result of requiring fewer positions than we originally anticipated for our COVID response throughout the year. Our maintenance was over budget due to the snow removal required in December. And for year-end program material supplies and printing, so we had a lot of PPE on hand at the end of the year that we had to expense for accounting purposes to be on side ministry requirements. So that's a big chunk of that December expense that you'll see on the books. For our capital projects, the Markdale renovation was complete as of December 31st. For the Owen Sound Clinic, it didn't start until January. It is still well underway. It's on track to be complete by March 31st, which is when the funding has to be spent by. And again, we're still waiting to hear about the dental chair as to when it will arrive. But other than that, everything with that project is going as planned.
Thank you, Kim. I have one question. That surplus of $976,000, is it returned to the ministry or we haven't received it yet?
We've received the cash flow for that. So the ministry will recover it at some point, either in 2022 or possibly 2023.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or comments for Kim on the report? I'm seeing shaking heads. So I need a mover and seconder to receive the December 2021 financials as presented. I have Alan and Brian OLeary. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. And 9.3 is the budget draft presentation. All yours again, Kim.
For you, Madam Chair, this is the 2022 draft budget.
Okay.
So due to the timing of completing this budget, we were able to incorporate pretty current information into our FTE complement and budget amounts. We budgeted based on our current permanent staff, as well as all of our temporary contract staff, what their current contracts are saying. We're also able to include any positions that we were currently actively recruiting for in 2022. So due to that, there's really no estimates as to how many nurses or students we'll need. The numbers in the 2022 budget are very reflective of the FTEs and staffing that we will hire for this year. Overtime has continued into 2022, so we estimated that we will experience a similar expense to what we had in 2021. We assumed that COVID-19 and COVID vaccine will continue in 2022, and our ministry submission requires that we break down our estimated costs for both the COVID-19 program, the COVID vaccine program, as well as our pandemic recovery. So we had to build in some estimates as to, staff's time in those respective areas. So we used a 25% COVID-19, a 25% COVID vaccine, and a 50% program recovery allocation to come up with those amounts, recognizing that there may be some shifts between the different programs. We also use the program manager's estimation of their staff's current time being spent in their respective COVID programs to allocate additional wages to them if necessary. ONA and ProTech both have collective agreements that expire in 2022. So there will be negotiated increases for those groups in this year. And our benefits, some of them may go to market this year, but that has not happened yet. So we used our most recent renewal rates in the benefit amounts that we used for this year. So our budget approach for 2022, in the fall, we prepared a preliminary budget and sent it to senior management, outlining the FTEs that we were planning on for 2022. From there, senior management made additional hiring decisions and set budget level goals for the operating expense lines. At that time, we did not have confirmation yet that the COVID extraordinary funding was going to continue on into 2022. That happened shortly after that meeting, which did change things a little bit, because once we found out that that was going to be available in 2022, that enabled us to extend some contracts and retain certain staffing levels to help us with our recovery in 2022. So after the fall meeting, we went to the departmental managers and they built detailed budgets for each of their respective programs, itemizing the needs of their programs. And from there, we rolled up the department manager's requests and compared that to the senior management thresholds that they had set, and made a few small adjustments where necessary to get the budget to balance. Overall, our budget for 2022 is very much in line with the 2021 actuals that we experienced. So in summary, our total budgeted revenues for 2022 would be $19.4 million, and same for expenses. So that's a $936,000 decrease compared to our 2021 budget. That decrease relates to less COVID-19 and COVID-19 vaccine extraordinary funding being requested. And again, that's based on, in 2021, we asked for about 4.7 million. We originally budgeted for about 4.7 million in COVID funding, but we only needed 3.6. So that's why 2022, we've requested less to be more in line with what our actuals were for 2021. From a county standpoint, starting in 2017, Grey and Bruce County agreed to utilize population data from Statistics Canada to determine their share of the mandatory program funding. And Statistics Canada released some updated numbers in February of this year, which slightly changed the percentage between the two counties. So Bruce County's percent went up 0.18%, and Gray's went down 0.18%. So from a financial standpoint, that's about a $5,000 change between the two counties. So Grey County's contribution would go down 5,000 and Bruce County's would go up. But the total amount of funding requested between the two counties remains unchanged from 2021. So this is a breakdown of the $19 million in revenue that we've budgeted for 2022. So 78% of our funding we are requesting from the Ministry of Health. The 11 million is our base funding, the mitigation funding, and our senior dental funding. So that's our regular non-extraordinary type funding that we would get on an annual basis. The COVID and one-time funding includes like the COVID vaccine, the pandemic recovery, the IPAC hub, and school-funded nurses. Grey and Bruce County's contributions remain unchanged from prior years. And non-Ministry of Health programs are our Healthy Babies, Healthy Children, our Children's Oral Health Initiative, any funding from RNAO, as well as our PLAY program. To give a breakdown of our total expenses, so salaries and benefits continue to be our most significant cost, making up 78% of our total budget. Building occupancy costs are up 2% compared to last year, but our total operating costs were down 2%. So the net decrease between our occupancy and our operating costs was about $40,000. Our other operating, which makes up 2%, includes things like associations and memberships, furniture and equipment, insurance, as well as our media budget. From an FTE standpoint, so these are the positions that had changes in the number of FTEs compared to 2021. As you can see, most of them had a decrease, again, because we're asking for about $1 million less in funding. Some of these positions in 2021 we were estimating how many we might need for our vaccine response, as well as for our continued COVID-19 response. Whereas in 2022, we had a bit of a better benchmark to determine what we actually needed. And so that's why there's a decrease in most of those positions. If a position is not listed there, then that means the FTEs were the same as what they were in 2021 and there was no change. So the total extraordinary funding that we're requesting for 2022, so extraordinary funding would be our COVID-19 vaccine, and our pandemic recovery. So the total of those three requests in our 2022 submission is $3.4 million. If we compare that to what we needed in 2021, that was $3.5 million. So it's about 130,000 less, but still comparable to our 2021 actuals. And so the one-time funding requests that we've included to the ministry, we've asked for additional resources for the needle exchange funding. Historically, we have not had enough funding to cover the true cost of the materials and supplies required for that program. A new vaccine fridge, when we get our fridges calibrated annually, if one is deemed to not be fixable or if one breaks in the year, this would give us the pre-approved funding to go out and replace that. PHI student practicum, a security system due to the events that happened in the fall of 2021. And then the pandemic recovery and resumption of public health programs and services. As Dr. Zayed talked about in her presentation, the retaining our casual and contract staff will help us with our catch-up and recovery. And it'll allow us to scale up and scale down as necessary to our response in 2022. And one thing to note is that all one-time requests submitted to the ministry, if they are approved, they'll be approved at 100%. So the province would pay 100% of this, and there would be no cost share portion required from the counties. And are there any questions?
Thanks, Kim. Any questions or comments for Kim on that section? Brian Millen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. just wondering and thinking back to Nelson's presentation earlier, are there budget implications for his proposed work, and where would they fall in this budget, please?
Kim?
Yeah, so we've included a media budget within Nelson's department. So he'd be able to utilize that budget that he currently has for his plans for 2022. So he does have operating dollars there to execute what he has planned.
Brian?
And how many dollars are allocated there, please?
Yeah, I have that off the top of my head. Oh, actually, if you go to,
Or perhaps it's in your presentation and I missed it.
yes, well, so the public education line that we have on there's like a financial summary that compares 2022 to 2021. It's a page full of financials. The public education line has $54,000 in it.
Okay.
Dr. Eric?
Yeah, so the communication is embedded in a foundation standard similar to epidemiology, similar to other functions that runs across all programs. And this is this funding or this function has always been there. For example, if there is a health promoter communicating to a group, whether it is a family or a group of people or the community at large, there is a communication support to that presentation, whether it is the health promoter will run it by communication or so. It is a better practice to communicate to the community at large instead of individuals or smaller groups. So again, the functions that Denis and Nelson have been, will be working on is continuation of what we do in public health. There's no extra specific funding for that project of branding. And one final example, whenever we were dealing with or promoting vaccine and vaccine clinics, there were expenses to radio ads or social media or subscription to certain software. So it is built in that foundation standard.
Good enough, Brian, or?
Yeah, no, that's good. Thank you very much. And if I could, another unrelated question.
Absolutely.
Ministry of Environment in our tenant in the building there, where are they at with rent in terms of levels and increases and all the rest of it there, please?
Kim?
So I believe their contract goes until 2024, and it was locked in. So there is locked in at a fixed amount annually. So it hasn't increased over the last couple of years.
But that revenue is in the budget here, right?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, other questions, comments? I have Chris and then Selwyn.
I have a question about the staffing. I don't know if it's appropriate for open session, but it does identify a reduction in full-time equivalents. So just wondered how we're going about that, and are they being kept as a pool? I know the strategic plan mentioned something about surge capacity if there's a future another round of COVID.
Don't say that, Chris. Dr. Aaron?
Just wondered what happens with those 25 people.
So sorry, 25 people permanent, you said?
Well, I thought it said 25. I don't know what it said. I don't have the screen in front of me.
Yeah, it was 25.
Yeah.
If you want to go ahead.
Yeah. So this was in comparison to the 2021 budget. So there were a handful of positions in the 2021 budget that we didn't actually end up recruiting for or filling because at the time it was a large estimation. You know, we really didn't know how many nurses and additional staff we were going to need for the COVID vaccine response. So there's positions that were budgeted for, and as time went on, we realized, you know, we had the resources we need. We didn't necessarily need to fill them. So no one's been laid off or like or their contracts have ended to balance this budget. It's more of a realignment of we have better information in 2022 of what we actually need. And we know for our current people in-house, whether like when their contracts go to and whether or not we need to extend them. So I think 2022 is just, we've got more information to benchmark our needs on than we did when we were doing 2021, which is why in 2021 we had a bit of a, we had $1 million surplus because it was a lot of, estimating at the time.
Okay, excellent answer. Totally clarified it for me. Thank you.
Okay, good, thanks. Chris. Selwyn?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Chris asked exactly the question I was going to ask, but I wonder if I could now follow up and ask, what was the 2021 actual FTE versus the 2022 budgeted FTE?
Through you, Madam Chair, that's a good question. I don't have it right with me. I'd have to, I'd have to pull a report and get that information for you, Selwyn.
Very good.
Selwyn, would you like that emailed once she had those details, or next meeting is fine?
Either is fine.
We'll go with the next meeting.
Madam Chair?
Dr. Era?
We will provide the number, but roughly from memory, we budgeted for around 170 people, which is an increase of 60 people to comparing to the baseline we have. And we end up recruiting or needing less than that number by 20 or 25. So we end up around 150, 155, but we'll provide the exact numbers.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments, questions? Luke?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. And maybe you could help clarify a thing for me with regard to the extraordinary funding. I appreciate that that's it's focused on COVID-19 response and also recovery of regular programs and services as we come out of the pandemic. But I wonder, can you give me just a little bit more detail about what that $3.5 million is funding? Is it mostly the purchases of things that we won't need to be purchasing after this year, or are there salaries and benefits mixed in there? Just a high level sense of all the things that's buying.
Okay, Kim?
Through you, Madam Chair. So it's mostly salaries and wages for those 3 programs. The recovery specifically is salaries and wages. Included in COVID vaccine and COVID-19 would be, scrub cleaning, security services, things like that incrementally that we didn't have those expenses before, like in regular operations. We've included those in the extraordinary request. But I would say 80–85% of the requests are just staff salaries and benefits. So, and what you do is you take your total cost of COVID and COVID vaccines. So I think one was about 3.5 and one was just over 4 million. And then you say, but my base funding can cover, a good portion of it. So incrementally, I only need another 3.4 million to cover all of my costs, because a significant amount of our resources right now are dealing with COVID-19 and COVID vaccine, but we do have the base funding to cover a portion of that. But long story short, most of it is wages and benefits that we're asking for additional funding.
Luke?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So can you give me a sense of who the folks are who we're paying for out of this, and what the impact will be when this money isn't available in a year's time?
Yeah, so it's pretty much organizational wide. So most positions have been impacted to some extent by these programs, and their team, like all disciplines, are working to support the COVID-19 response and COVID vaccine. And I mean, Dr. Zayat, you might be able to speak in more detail, or Dr. Ara, but. Dr.
Ara? If I may, Madam Chair, through you, for example, public health inspectors or dental hygienists will be supporting or have been supporting the case and contact tracer function, the infectious disease team. Similarly, healthy baby, healthy children and dental hygienists or other people have been supporting the vaccine clinics to be vaccinators or to be admin people. I would say almost everybody in the health unit contributed in one way or the other to the response. And the question came from the ministry to put together a budget projecting this year, and there is challenging uncertainty in it because we don't know if there's going to be a surge in the fall. We don't know if there's going to be a new variant. But when you put multiple budgets together, or you think about it from different point of view, it's going to be like a seesaw. If there is increased activity in COVID response, vaccine, and case and contact tracing management, there's going to be decreased activity in the backlog catch-up process. And if there's no function or there's no increased activity from COVID in the summer, for example, we'll be ramping up the same clinics to provide other vaccines and ramping up other functions to do the inspections and other. So that's where we came up with the simplified divide of 50% recovery and 50% response divided by 25 by 25. And regardless if the response, let's say, was only 25 of the 100%, the recovery most likely will be 75%. And the ministry gave us the flexibility to utilize part of the funding for the other functions as well.
Madam Chair, and I apologize. I'm sure my confusion here is just a function of my ignorance. I just am not clear. Like, it sounds from your explanation, Dr. Era, it sounds like you diverted a bunch of resources that you already had to work on the pandemic, people who were already working for you, and now they're going to go back and work on things that they've been working on before. Recovery, we need some extra financial support for that, but they were already in our budget, right? These people we were already paying these people. So why the additional? Why do you need the additional $3.5 million to pay them? Like, who are you? In my simplified outlook, you need extra money. You need to hire more people, and there'd be a bunch of people out there whose salaries won't be covered if this money goes away. But that doesn't sound like what you're explaining. So I'm just a little lost as to how that's working.
Dr. Era or Dr. Zayed?
Certainly, let me take a first step at this, and I believe Kim can explain it even more with numbers. So our base budget is 15 million, and we have a team of around 110 people. And most of them went to the response for COVID over the past year. We needed more resources, so we had hired around 55 people. And those people have been paid partially by our own base budget. The 15 million would cover our functions, our staff. But because of the pandemic, some functions didn't operate a full budget. For example, during the lockdown, there's no inspection of restaurants. So there is surplus in that 15 million that has been used also for the response. And the ministry would cover everything that we need over the 15 million. And those 3 or 4 million went to support that extra function, whether it is our own staff or the extra staff.
Dr. Zayed, do you want to comment?
Sorry, Madam Chair. Also, I just want to add that we have a temporary pool of employee right now covering the work for the response. And in the same time, this employee, they are working with the ID team, and they are working with the vaccine team. And they have other functions to do, but they are temporary, on a temporary contract. So scaling up, still we are prepared in our budget for that situation. However, they are trained to do other things in the same time.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Further questions or comments? All right, I don't see any. So we need another motion to receive the budget draft presentation. I have Selwyn and Brian O'Leary. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you, and thanks, Kim. All right, moving on, item 10, in camera. We do have an in-camera meeting. It's been recommended that the Board of Health meet in closed session in order to consider personal matters about an identifiable individual. We have 3 items, and to discuss labor relations negotiations and matters pertaining to collective bargaining. So I need a mover and seconder to go into in camera. I have Brian Millen and Alan Barfoot. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. So Mary, let me know when we're okay to continue on in camera.
Okay, Sue.
Thanks, Mary. We are now in open session, and I declare we discussed only the items that were on the closed meeting agenda. We approved the February 4th in-camera meeting minutes. 2 items were received for information, and direction was given to staff on 2 items. So that concludes our Board of Health meeting, unless there is anything else. Brian O'Leary.
Thanks, Madam Chair. If you'll allow, I wanted to ask Dr. Ara, do you have a date in mind for when we can come back to the boardroom and meet in person? I feel like I've known HC for a long time now, but we still haven't met face to face. I'm looking forward to getting back to the boardroom.
Dr. Ara?
I suspect the next board meeting, if people want to come in person, we can definitely arrange for it. There will be limited number of seats to keep the 2 meters between the seats, but I suspect we'll be able to do that, definitely.
Okay, any other business and comments? Brian Millen?
If we do have an in-person meeting, Mary knows we like sweets for dessert, right? She knows that?
You'll have to bring them, Brian.
Noted in the minutes.
Thank you.
Okay, so I need a mover and seconder to adjourn the open meeting. Selwyn and Brian O'Leary, all in favor? That's carried. We are adjourned at 12:38. Thank you very much, everyone.
Take care, all.
Thanks, everyone. Bye now.
Have a good weekend.